This episode of the Wired UK podcast is brought to you by Braintree V.0, the snippet of code that lets you accept PayPal, Apple Pay, and credit and debit cards in your mobile app or website, all with a single integration. To learn more and to try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/wirednews. I'm James Temperton, and this is episode 256 of the Wired UK podcast. On the show today, we talk to Pavel Durov, founder of messaging app Telegram. Launched in 2013, the service is built around hardcore encryption and comes with the promise of no ads, no subscription fees, forever. Durov, a 30-year-old Russian entrepreneur living in exile, is an outspoken opponent of Vladimir Putin's regime. He previously built and lost control of VKontakte, the country's biggest social network, and has been described as the Zuckerberg of Russia. Telegram now has more than 100 million monthly active users and continues to grow despite competing against the likes of Facebook-owned WhatsApp. But the service's approach to privacy and encryption have proven controversial. Islamic State recommends Telegram to its members, and some have hit out at Telegram's unwillingness to bow to state pressure. On a recent visit to London, Durov sat down with Wired editor David Rowan to talk about Telegram's successes, controversies, and its plans for the future.
Welcome to London, Pavel. How is your Not Making Money app doing?
Oh, thank you, David. We are doing great, actually. And we just announced that we reached 100 million active users.
How do you get to 100 million users in as a competitive a space as messaging?
Well, you have to be focused on providing the best service for your customers. I think that's it. We believe that we provide the most easy to use, the fastest, and the most secure messaging service on the market.
So talk us through the growth. Like a year before today, roughly how many users would you have had?
Roughly, it would be 40 or 50 million, I think.
That is some growth curve. So it's really on one of these exponential curves. And are these people, the 100 million, are they in particular parts of the world?
Well, they're spread across the globe, so you cannot name one specific market which would account for like 25 or 30%. We are growing on every continent except maybe for Africa, which is kind of small still, Telegram.
So a lot of Wired readers, listeners will be familiar with, will be using Telegram. I guess there'll also be a lot who think, well, I'm happy with WhatsApp or Messenger or Line. Why do you think they should notice Telegram? What's the difference with Telegram?
So in Telegram, we try to put away all these limitations you traditionally had on other messaging apps. For example, on the market leader WhatsApp, you had to you had to access your messages from one specific device. There was no cross-device synchronization. So we solved that, and we also provide persistent history. So everything is instantly searchable. So you could basically use Telegram as you use email, for example. And more than that, we allow our users to share files, documents of any size, to share media large in volume, something that our competitors usually don't provide. And also many limitations that you have on other messaging apps, like 100 members maximum per group chat. Our limitations are far more generous. For example, we have a 1,000 member limit on a group chat, in comparison with 100 members of our competitors. So it's things like that make more and more people switch to Telegram. And above all, it's also the most reliable messaging service on the market. So even if you have a weakest connection, you could still use Telegram. You could still send messages. And I haven't even said about security and encryption up to this point, which is also a big selling point, of course.
Well, we'll talk about encryption in a little while, because that's an issue that lots of politicians keep talking about when they mention Telegram. In terms of giving people the choice to use the app how they want on desktop, on mobile, when I went to see Jan Koum and Brian Acton at WhatsApp, I did a cover story for Wired, which came out just actually before they were bought by Facebook. They were obsessed with simplifying features, not giving people too many choices. There was a little post-it note on Jan Koum's desk from Brian Acton: no ads, no games, no gimmicks. And they deliberately wanted to limit the choices that the users had, because they said that's a way to make sure it just works. So they seem to have a point, don't they?
Absolutely, and I agree with them in this particular respect. And we have tried to be the best messaging technology, not only in the terms of speed and security, but also in ease of use. And we try to keep Telegram as simple as possible. And if you look at our iPhone app, it has only 3 tabs in comparison with WhatsApp that you mentioned, which is 5, and it looks a bit more complicated. So the challenge in building Telegram is, how do we add features without adding complexity? And one of the ways to do that is provide open platforms for third-party developers that could build on top of Telegram features that some users would like, and those who wouldn't need them, wouldn't see them in the Telegram that we just installed into their devices. And one of the examples is the sticker platform, which we launched early last year. If you a business-oriented user, you wouldn't see stickers on Telegram. It's clean, it's pure and comprehensible. But if you like stickers, you could find any kind of stickers on the platform, because this is all user-generated. So you can basically upload sticker packs, and you can use them, and you can share them with friends. And it's amazing how much creativity this step unleashed.
I'm still getting my head around 100 million. This is monthly active users.
Yes.
More than doubling in a year. How many messages are they sending every day?
We deliver 15 billion messages per day.
That's a lot of infrastructure. How many people are working on Telegram behind the scenes?
The core engineering team is 15 people.
15 people?
Yep. And obviously we had to automate a lot of things, like to rely on scripts and artificial intelligence rather than on real human labor to keep everything up and running. But also it helps us that we have the experience of scaling large projects from our years building VKontakte, which, being the most popular social network in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, has reached at certain points the same, similar, I would say, metrics that Telegram has reached.
So you were running VKontakte, and then there was a flurry of news reports kind of a bit more than a year ago saying you were no longer running the company, and it was a bit unclear what had happened, and then you left Russia. You'd been in St. Petersburg. Tell us from the start where the idea for VKontakte came and how it grew, and then explain a little about why you are no longer running it.
So when I was still the student of St. Petersburg State University, which is in some ways the equivalent of Harvard in Russia, it was graduated by both presidents of Russia and a lot of other people, I decided to start with building websites for the community of our department, and we shared various materials for exams, etc., etc. And then it gradually grew to be the website of the students of the whole university, which is enrolls like 20,000 students. And then, while I was still there and under 20, it gradually expanded to other prestigious universities in Russia. And it grew at the point when I realized we should have a more decentralized kind of platform, not portal-like, but social networking-like. And that was the point when I started VKontakte in 2006. And I basically used my previous projects as the initial user base for VKontakte. And then it gradually grew up to the point when we opened up registration for other countries, like post-Soviet countries, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Belarus. We made ourselves available also for the people who never graduated any university eventually. And as a result, it reached tens of millions of users rather quickly in a few years. At that time, the government of Russia wasn't very interested in the internet activities because I was told that President Putin didn't use internet himself, so he didn't quite understand what would be the point of regulating the internet. But then the situation began to change when online activity began being reflected in the offline world in the forms of protests and civil rights struggle. And after that, what happened in December 2011, situation started to gradually change, and more regulation was adopted. New laws were passed to regulate the internet activity. At the same time, the government tried to use funds and companies and oligarchs which had good connections and good relations with the government to gradually overtake internet companies in Russia. And so eventually, when 2 years ago I received some requests from the government, which was not for the first time, but these requests were made to force us to shut down opposition communities in Russia, namely Alexei Navalny's group on VKontakte, and also requests that demanded that we gave out personal information of protesters in Ukraine. And I publicly refused to do that several times, after which basically the board of directors of the company, which I no longer controlled, dismissed me as the CEO. Before that was a long story of shareholders' struggle and secret buyout of 48% of the company by a fund close to the government, but it's a long story. I won't bore you with that.
But by this time you had what percentage control of the company?
Well, when it happened, me and my partners with whom I founded the company, the initial seed investors, we controlled 60% of the company. So we could basically influence decisions in a big way. After they sold their stake, I was in control of only 12% of the company. So I couldn't in any meaningful way influence even my own appointment as the CEO or dismissal. So at some point they just used the opportunity to fire me, which may be the right thing for them to do, because they were afraid. The shareholders were afraid that my refusal to cooperate with the government in these aspects could possibly create problems for them, and they were eliminating that risk by dismissing me.
This wasn't the first time you'd proved to them you were a bit of a troublemaker. There was an earlier incident where you were ordered to do something, and there was a photo you posted online of a dog wearing a hoodie.
Yes, that was December 2011, when there were these protests on the streets of St. Petersburg and Moscow, and they were coordinated in a way by the opposition community led by Alexei Navalny, and they requested, the prosecutor's office of the Russian Federation requested that I should block this community, which didn't make much sense. So I refused to do that, and that was the first time when I had armed policemen at my doorstep trying to chat with me.
So they didn't arrest you?
No, they were not authorized, basically, to arrest me, because the situation was, I guess, unclear at that point, and they didn't want to make things worse.
Do you think they wanted to intimidate you?
I guess that describes it in the correct way.
Did you feel intimidated?
I felt at that point that I don't have enough tools to defend myself in many ways, and one of these ways was I couldn't be sure that my communication with my brother was not monitored and wiretapped, and that was one of the reasons why we decided to think about an encryption protocol that would enable this possible, that would make this possible. And that's how the idea of Telegram started, basically.
When you started receiving orders to block Navalny's supporters, to give the names of Ukrainian protesters, in what form did those orders, those requests come to you?
These were official documents with signatures and with the double-headed eagle, and so they were pretty formal. And I guess it's at first their legal status was not clear because again, there were not many laws in Russia regulating internet activity. But after this first incident, the government started to pass new laws, making such requests more legal than they used to be. So in the end, one of the reasons why I had to leave Russia was that after I was fired from the company I started, I realized that I have to focus my time and energy on and my efforts on Telegram, and then it was not possible to run Telegram from Russia. The legal framework related to private data and privacy just was not consistent with our mission.
So when you decided to ignore the government directives to expose protesters, to block channels on vContact, you knew you were messing with some pretty tough and determined people. You knew, surely, it was going to end with them winning.
I always hoped that the common sense would prevail. So probably I was too idealistic, but it seemed to me that somewhere in the government there would be a reasonable person who would understand the logic behind our actions. Because if you look at that time, there was absolutely no reason to block a community in one of the social media that were operating on the Russian market. Okay, VKontakte was the largest, but there was also Twitter, Facebook, etc., and and blocking just blocking the activity on just one social media didn't make much sense to us. So our response was basically, even if we did that, the only result would be that all of this activity would go to other platforms. So why should we do that? It doesn't make any sense. So we really hope that somebody up there would realize that, which, I don't know, probably didn't happen.
When this was happening, were you afraid for your personal security?
I wouldn't lie to you. I was somewhat concerned about what might happen next. So I was uncertain how events would develop. And especially after this incident with armed police, I didn't feel too secure within Russia, and I gradually started to spend more and more time outside.
So when you discovered you'd been fired, how quickly did you get out of Russia?
Fortunately, I was not in Russia at that point. I was traveling in the US, so it was an easy decision.
You didn't go back?
I just didn't go back.
And where have you been living since then?
So the majority of my time is spent in Europe, EU. I like old beautiful cities like Paris. We also have a really small office in Berlin. Some kind of legal and accounting office here in London. And also a number of locations we choose to stay at, like on the Finnish lakeside, the Lake District of Finland, which is very beautiful, and we usually prefer to spend, as a team, we prefer to spend our summers.
So when you say we, how many people is this?
So the core team is about 15 engineers. Usually when we work from somewhere, we rent a big place or a big house or a big office and a number of apartments close by. And this is how we explore new things and also communicate with the users in the area, understand their needs. And a lot of great ideas came to us just because we were traveling and we were communicating with people all over the world. For example, we spent some time in Indonesia last November and December, and it was an invaluable experience because in that part of the world, people are using Telegram in a completely different way that we're used to, and we realized that we should improve some functionality in a certain way. So I think that provided we don't relocate too often, it's actually quite efficient.
So let me get this right. This is a company with 100 million users that doesn't have one base.
You could say so.
A distributed company.
Just like the infrastructure of Telegram is distributed. So unlike other messaging applications, we host data of users in a number of data centers spread across the globe. And there's no single jurisdiction that could regulate data stored on our servers, because even the data which we store in the cloud is encrypted with a key which is split into several parts. Each of these parts is located in different jurisdiction. So we prefer to stay as much independent as possible.
So when you move your team to another country, I've previously met up with you in Paris. I met in London when you were here sometime last year. How long do you plan to stay in each of these places?
So usually 2 to 4 months is enough, because you don't want to stay for a short time, because if it's just a short time, people get and the team gets distracted, and the first week is usually wasted on just exploring the area, getting used to the new environment. So you should stay for a few weeks at least. I think 3 months is an ideal period.
So we're having this conversation in the Wired office in Hanover Square in London, but where have you been before coming to London this time?
So I came here from Paris. Before that, I visited Dubai. So before that, let me think. So it was Munich. Obviously, we met there. And before that, I spent a big chunk of my time in Indonesia, like I told you before. And now I hope to go to San Francisco. And then to get back to Barcelona to speak at the MWC event.
Pavel, this sounds like the boyfriend who doesn't like commitment. I mean, is this because you have an anxiety about relying on one jurisdiction to look after you? Is this because of your Russian experiences? You don't want to allow any state to claim you?
Well, in a way that could be put that way, because this encryption, pro-encryption, anti-encryption debate is still ongoing, and we don't know how it will end in this or that country. For example, we seriously considered setting up our primary base in London some time ago, and then I believe David Cameron made some statement about messaging apps that should provide access to law enforcement bodies, and we thought maybe we shouldn't be too hasty about that. Maybe we should wait a little bit until regulation becomes clear. So it would be very disappointing for us if we invested a lot of money and time into building a great office for ourselves in a great place like London, and then learn the next day that this place is now inconsistent with our mission.
So did you hear that, David Cameron? Your comments about demanding access to encryption keys has prevented London from being the home of one of the fastest growing messaging services in the world, with 100 million customers, which could have been another crown for London. What would you say to David Cameron if he was in the room with us now? Because he's got a very strong line against encryption. He says it's helping the bad guys.
Well, I would say that overly simplistic solutions to this complex problem would not be productive, and the solutions that are being proposed right now would actually make matters worse.
When you read about Telegram in the news these days, it is mostly because you're being criticized for allowing terrorist organizations to use the service because they see the benefits of encryption. And, the Wall Street Journal last week, there's a quote, "Islamic State eludes Southeast Asian authorities with the Telegram app." The Voice of America, there's a headline on their website, "Why Islamic State loves Telegram." I mean, you mentioned Paris. In Paris, they're very sensitive about the way the bad guys were able to communicate. Do you feel a certain sense of responsibility for the people who are using the encrypted services of the app?
There's let me get back to just first comment a little bit on this media coverage. You're right that in American media, Telegram is often referred to in the context of this, unfortunate terrorist activity, but in many other markets, the situation is very different. So if you look at Italian media or Spanish media or Indonesian, Russian media, German media, Telegram is more widespread there, and hence the context is completely different because the demographics using the app includes journalists, businessmen, influencers, so people who understand what Telegram is really about. So in America, the situation is a bit different because we have only just a couple of million users from the US, and so journalists covering the story hear about Telegram first time themselves in the context of ISIS and terrorist attacks, and sometimes they make these funny statements, referring to Telegram as a ISIS preferred messaging app, which I think it's absurd and a little bit discouraging for a team which doesn't want to have anything to do with this terrorist activity. So getting back to your question about responsibility, well, I would say that our mission is to build the best messaging technology on the market, and judging by our growing popularity, we're somewhat successful in reaching this mission. Unfortunately, every advancement in technology could be used both for good and for evil, and Telegram is no exception. But and we, in any case, we do not approve of, or of course, we don't feel. We do not approve of these kind of activities, but at the same time, we don't feel that we should be regarded as guilty in this, because it's just like if a car manufacturer tries to build the best car for the market, the most secure, the fastest one, the most efficient. This is their goal. They want to provide the best product for their customers. It's just like us. Our goal is to provide the best product for our customers. And various people may be using this technology for their purposes, and it is up to law enforcement bodies to prevent that, to use their spectrum of methods to solve the problem. And of course, this debate which is going right now has reasons to exist, but at the same time, again, I think that the solutions that are being proposed are counterproductive and overly simplistic.
But the law enforcement bodies and the security services would say that you are, in particular, preventing them from doing their work by not giving them the keys that allow them to monitor what the jihadis are saying. And there is evidence, it's not just media reporting. The Malaysian police arrested 4 suspects a couple of weeks ago, and they said 3 of them had been recruited either through Telegram or Facebook. There is evidence that ISIS has been recruiting people, spreading propaganda, and maybe organizing attacks using Telegram and other apps. The Taliban is visible on Telegram. And I think the argument that the security services make is all this is happening in a way that they can't monitor or decode. And that's something that they're blaming you for.
I wouldn't say it would be fair to blame us, because we didn't invent end-to-end encryption, and even before us, companies like Apple implemented end-to-end encryption into their services, like iMessage. There were plenty of secure messaging apps before Telegram and created after Telegram was launched. So it's not like Telegram is the only player in this field. As we're getting more and more popular, I mean, statistically, it's inevitable that the amount of illegal activity going on would also increase. But the bigger question is, what do we do about end-to-end encryption? Because we have no access to the information, to the communication of terrorists using it. And we cannot help law enforcement bodies anyway here, like Apple cannot help them decrypt iMessage messages probably. So the bigger question is, should the society make this trade-off, sacrifice their right to absolute privacy to decrease the risk of unwanted things happening? So this, I think, is something that should be decided by each society, whether like the citizens of this or that country want to be more like China, or they want to be more like the United States used to be when they were founded. So I think it's not me who should make this decision. Although if you ask me personally, since I had this experience in Russia, I'm very skeptical about any initiative that makes us closer to a big brother society.
But the argument works on two levels. So there's the political theory level and the ethics level, which it's easier for me to understand. And then there's the practical level of the teams on the street in Paris deciding through encrypted apps which restaurant they're going to go, which concert hall they're going to go, and start shooting people. The UK spy chief, Robert Hannigan, was quoted recently as saying, technology companies are now the command and control networks of choice for terrorists and criminals, precisely because they are heavily encrypted. So isn't there a practical reason for an app like Telegram to work with these law enforcement agencies, with these intelligence services, simply because of the particular urgent problem that we're finding not just on the streets of Europe, but in Malaysia, in the Middle East, in Africa?
So I think every time we discuss such a step, or we should take into account that the other side would also react after that, and they wouldn't just be doing what they had been doing before that. So if you imagine that all popular messaging applications implement backdoors or start sharing data extensively with the authorities, and there will be no way to make it secret for a long time, because once it's compromised, the news is out there. Also, Telegram is open source, so we cannot tweak our encryption and backdoor encryption without the whole world noticing it. And so once it happens, the bad guys will switch to another means of communication. And unfortunately, end-to-end encryption algorithms are already well researched, well documented, and could be used by everybody for good or for worse. And then if Telegram and other messaging apps become vulnerable and become less secure, there will be no problem for terrorists to switch to a new messaging app, probably one that they themselves would authorize to build, because now it's not the cost of building such an app is not millions of dollars, so it's tens of thousands at most, and they could contract a couple of engineers from China or India or Russia and do that easily. And that will be in a situation where we have decreased security for mass user, for law-abiding people using Telegram and other apps, and still have a potential terrorist activity going on somewhere.
They could, Pavel, but I guess the trouble is it's yours that they're using. It's Telegram that a lot of these organizations are using to recruit and to coordinate attacks according to the evidence that's been presented. So much as one might follow the logic of your argument, don't you personally feel uncomfortable with being in this position?
So just I'd like to comment a little bit about terrorists allegedly using Telegram. I've read these reports, and they usually include other messaging apps as well. So I don't think it would be great if I quoted it and referred to our competitors. But just to be fair, let's say that there are other messaging apps out there, and the more popular the app is, the bigger the chance that it's also being used for some illegal activity. Do we feel uncomfortable? I don't feel, of course, I don't feel happy about the situation, and I wish we could avoid it. At the same time, it is not clear what we could do, because our mission is to build the best tool, and it's not up to us how this tool is being used. And I think you can find the similar situation in many other areas. So what would you expect us to do to build a lame app, some app that nobody would use because it's slow or insecure or not user friendly? That doesn't make much sense. I think that the problem we are trying to solve here is outside the scope of technology.
Although you have made editorial interventions, you have blocked a whole bunch of Islamic State accounts. I think after the Paris attacks, I read that Telegram blocked maybe, was it 600 accounts? So how does that square with your thinking?
So there is a very big difference between private messages exchanged by our users and public channels that are also one of the features of Telegram. So with private communications, we cannot read them, and that's why we cannot even know whether they contain something related to illegal activities, while public channels, by definition, are designed in a way that they could be viewed by anybody who has this link, and they could be easily reported by any users. And once these channels get to a point that when they attract hundreds of users, they usually report it, and we take them down instantly. So every day we block a few channels that are related to this kind of activity.
And that depends on a human being reporting it and another human being taking it down. There's no way of automating the ability to block them being created in the first place.
So we are trying to build tools that would enable us to do it in a more efficient way, but I think that the primary goal is reached here. The primary goal is to prevent these terrorist organizations from spreading their propaganda using Telegram as a platform. And obviously, if they create a channel which has like 2 subscribers, which are themselves the creators of these channels, it's not that important. So if it's unknown, if nobody reads it, nobody has access to it, maybe it's not that important. But once it reaches certain threshold, it becomes visible, and we shut it down.
This is in part a battle of propaganda, of getting the message to people in the West who may be invited over to Syria. And one of the criticisms is it's pretty easy for anybody, no matter what their agenda, to create a channel on Telegram, and that channel can grow very quickly to thousands of users in a week. And when I look recently, it seemed that there had been Islamic State supporting groups like Nashir, Fusal al-Raf, and other groups with titles like supporters of the Islamic State. So then the question arises, is Telegram doing enough to stop these groups growing from the very moment they're launched?
So that's a good question, but speaking of this tool, it is really efficient, and a lot of media switching their activities on the Telegram platform, and BBC, for example, was very successful in establishing their channels on Telegram. They attracted, I believe, hundreds of thousands of subscribers with whom they now have a direct way of communication, much more direct than they have on Twitter or Facebook or whatever other older social media we may look at. Are we doing enough? Probably not, because we're a small team and we are trying to scale. We hire more and more people processing these reports, these requests. We are gradually building tools to automate the process, but it all takes time, obviously. But we try to make it one of our priorities, and whatever step we could take to decrease and eliminate this unwanted activity on Telegram, we make it.
Last time we talked, you offered Edward Snowden a job. Did you hear back from him?
So we have only electronic forms of communication with Edward Snowden. When I invited him to join us, I was still working at VKontakte. There was no Telegram then. And I was living in Russia. So it was a very big difference in comparison with what we have now. And at that point, it seemed to me that his knowledge about how to defend the privacy of our users would be invaluable. But obviously, because we made our offer too public, and I guess the biggest concern for Edward was security at that point, they had to, he and his lawyer, they had to refuse. But still, I think that it would have been great if he had accepted our offer. We could have made lots of great things, and we could certainly use his advice on Telegram, which we were launching at that time. So
it certainly proves that you are an equal opportunity offender of governments, because the Americans wouldn't have been too happy with that, as well as the Russians. So what does this tell us about Pavel's own political philosophy? It's clear that you support the underdog and you don't seem to love big, powerful organizations. But how would you describe your political views?
I'm an advocate of free market. I believe in decentralized and self-regulating systems. And I believe that in our century, in the 21st century, big hierarchical organizations, big companies and big governments are inefficient, and their activities in many ways could be counterproductive, and sometimes they are struggling to solve problems that they themselves had created before by trying to solve problems. There's a lot of inefficiency, bureaucracy, and many of that is a result of excessive centralization. And you see it in many countries, like Russia or China, and the more centralization you have, the more corruption you have, the more inefficiency you have. So I believe that a lot of things in our society, in how governments are structured, in how countries treat their citizens, should be changed in this century.
What do you see as your future? You've got this amazingly successful messaging app in one of the most competitive markets in tech at the moment. The messaging space is hugely busy. So you've shown you can build something of value, yet you're not charging money for it, you're not getting advertising. What do you want to build, and where do you see Pavel's future?
So the ideal scenario for us would be come up with a sustainable business model at some point and start earning enough to cover our expenses.
So you're financing Telegram yourself at the moment?
Yes, I'm burning my own personal cash.
And this is money you managed to get out of Russia during the VKontakte days?
I was lucky to sell the Russian company at the right moment before the market crashed. So I think that now I have the opportunity to give back to society by funding Telegram and enabling it to remain free and independent.
And how long can you keep this amazing business model of not having any revenue before you can't?
So it's an interesting question, but the answer depends on how fast we grow. Because the faster we grow, the bigger the expenses are. The monthly burn rate increases drastically, and if we get 1 billion users next year, we would be happy. But at the same time, the question you ask could be more burning, and we'd have to come up with a way to earn money quicker. With the current rate of growth, I think we can manage another few years.
Jan Koum of WhatsApp said at the DLD conference in January that they were no longer going to charge money for people to use WhatsApp. It seemed that not very many, but some people were still paying the $1 a year or the euro a year. And they haven't really shown a sustainable business model, but then Facebook comes along and buys them for $19 billion, so now it's kind of Facebook's problem. Do you see one solution for Telegram being acquired by a bigger tech company?
So we'd like to see Telegram independent from big companies as much as possible. I regard this step made by our competitors as one in the series of copying or adopting Telegram's features into their app. So Telegram was free for everybody since the day we launched, and now they are forced by the market to do the same. It makes perfect sense to me.
You have a bit of a rivalry with Jan Koum, because there's a quote I've got from him from August 2013 in which he said, Pavel Durov knows how to copy great products like Facebook and WhatsApp. This goes back, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is the comment Jan made when we launched in August 2013. And it's ironic because if you look at the evolution of his product over the last 2 years, his activities were focused mainly in copying features from Telegram, namely the integration of desktop. They created a desktop app which was launched a few years after us. There is still no data synchronization across the devices. There is still no multiple device support, but they tried to do that. They started to develop their own encryption algorithm and the end-to-end encryption service. They started to provide it. Still, it doesn't work on all devices, and it's unclear which the current state is, but they tried to do that, again, as a reaction of what we did. And there are few things that they did as a response, like increasing the limit of the group chat from 50 people to 100 people. At the same time, we increased from 200 to 1,000. So there are a few things like that I regard it as a good thing, because this way we could influence a broader market and not only provide a better service for our users, but a better service for the users of other messaging apps which are trying to replicate our features.
I remember you put a blog post out there a while ago headlined "How to Predict WhatsApp Features."
Actually, it's funny, but since then a couple of more features were introduced by WhatsApp following Telegram's footsteps.
Can there only be one winner in the messaging wars?
In theory, yes, but I highly doubt that would happen, because what we witness right now is people start to use one messaging app to chat with their friends, other to chat with their co-workers, and third to chat with their girlfriend or family. So it's this is something that is already happening, and people are using and can be using several messaging apps at once. So it's highly unlikely that we will see just one omnipresent default messaging apps installed on all devices. Although if it is to happen, we'd like to see Telegram as the messaging application.
But there is a viral effect with messaging. There's a viral loop, and the more people, the network effect, the more people who use one product, the more valuable that product is for the users. And with WhatsApp heading towards 1 billion users, not there yet, and also with Facebook very heavily promoting Messenger because they have other visions to turn Messenger into a platform that businesses can trade, can deal with customer service. You're always going to be, even at the speed you're growing now, a relative afterthought, aren't you?
You know, if you look at the situation we had 2.5 years ago, we had zero and they had hundreds of millions. Now we have 100 million active users, and it's much easier to grow from that point, from that user base to a large user base. And this viral effect you're speaking about, of course, it does exist, but at the same time, we see that people are eager to switch to a superior alternative, and a very big chunk of our users are migrants from WhatsApp and Facebook.
Especially on days when WhatsApp goes down, or I think it was blocked in Brazil. How did you benefit that day?
Well, a few million users sign up for Telegram from Brazil at that day, but we do not rely on that kind of traffic, which we regard as not organic. Our growth relies solely on people, our users, suggesting their friends to download Telegram and switch to Telegram. And every day, 350,000 people sign up for Telegram without any activity from our part. We don't spend anything on marketing.
350,000 new customers every day.
Yes.
It's pretty good. When I met Jan Koum, this was 2 months before Facebook had acquired them. I went to the WhatsApp office to write the Wired piece. I asked him, I said, so there must be a lot of big tech companies kind of calling you up, making very big financial offers for you to join them because you're on the mobile, you have the reach that they want. And he said to me, we're here to stay. It's against my ethics, it's against my integrity. So did Brian Acton, his co-founder, to ever sell. We're here for the long term. Yet, even Jan Koum's integrity allowed him to sell for $19 billion at the time. You say, Pavel, that you want Telegram to be here for the long term, independent. Do you not consider a scenario in which you did a deal with another big tech company?
You know, I think it would be irresponsible to say that something could never happen and something is impossible, because you never know what the future holds. So I can be certain about the ideal scenario, and I can be positive about things that we are trying to build on Telegram. But if you imagine some unpredictable events happening, like a financial crisis, nobody knows where to get money any longer, or we start to grow in an insane rate and we don't know what to do, and we are forced with an imminent closure. I mean, that could be that could be a factor that would make us do some radical choices. But at the same time, I hope that even if we do not come up with a sustainable business model, the preferred scenario for us would be to attract some kind of investment or loan and buy some more time before we come up with the business model, before we start earning money.
Would you ever see it taking advertising?
I don't think that advertising could be organically integrated into a private messaging app. Although there are private messages and there are public ways to communicate on Telegram, like channels. And channels seem to be a little bit more fit for that. And some of the media that have launched Telegram channels, they already are using them to integrate ads into the messages in Telegram channel. And probably that's some area to consider. Maybe there is a revenue sharing model here that could be considered.
It's not entirely working for Twitter, I think, because they're still disappointing the markets. What about, again, Jan Koum recently said they're going to be focusing more on business services and charging for that. Could you see that working for Telegram?
Well, the irony of the situation is that the features that they have announced last month this month actually, are basically features that Telegram launched last year. The bot platform, the inline bot platform that we launched recently. Businesses can already communicate on Telegram, and they actually do in many countries. Process feedback and allow customers to order tables at restaurants and many other things that our competitor mentioned. The only thing that is missing right now in Telegram is a payment platform which would allow third-party services in the form of bots to accept money from users to sell their services and products, in which again we could potentially have our small stake, tax it a little bit, and potentially it could be another revenue stream. So the features announced by WhatsApp are nothing new to us. It wouldn't be too modest to say this, but I guess we've been pioneering the whole bot revolution from its start.
So it's still you and your brother who are the main shareholders in Telegram?
Well, yes, you could say so, but in order to make things simpler, formally it's just me. But it's me and my brother who are taking all the decisions on the macro level.
And you haven't taken any outside investment up until now?
No, we haven't.
You must be getting a lot of approaches from savvy investors who saw that Sequoia did a very nice deal with WhatsApp when they weren't owned by Facebook.
Yes, we are lucky and grateful to have received numerous offers from funds of big companies, well, including the one that you mentioned.
And you're not taking any of those offers?
We don't need the outside investment at this point, and my hope is that we won't need it at all in the future as well. But if we have to at some point, that's an option to consider.
So if there are some of the top VCs listening to this, maybe Condé Nast that owns Wired, they would like to put some money into WhatsApp, into Telegram. Sorry about that. You'll just tell them, I'm sorry, not interested.
Yes, I don't think it's relevant at the time being, and if it becomes relevant, we'll let them know.
So tell us what next for Telegram. So you talked a bit about bots. What sort of features is your team working on now that we're going to get to use?
Right now, if I want to answer what are we working right now, we are trying to provide the best user experience in voice messages. We think voice messaging service provided by the existing players is inferior and could be improved in many ways. But every month is a new thing. If you've followed Telegram progress, you've noticed that every month or like a month and a half, we push a major update on all of the platforms and introduce something that we regard as revolutionary in a way. So, well, who knows? And we're a small team. We like to stay flexible in our decisions. So I wouldn't say like, look, we are introducing phone calls next month or next year, because this way we'll lose flexibility. We have a roadmap, we have some plan of features ahead, but this plan is fluid, and if we notice that there is some trend or some priority arising out of that we've been thinking about, we'll change this plan.
And I want to leave with your own plan. So you're in London at the moment. Do you know where you're going after London?
So I'm in London for another few days. Then I'll be in San Francisco and then to Barcelona to prepare for the event.
It can't be easy having a personal life when you're living like this. I mean, is there somebody special in Pavel's life, or would that be too much hard work?
So I guess on the personal level, as well as on the level of Telegram, the priority is freedom. So I hope we could derive everything from that point.
Pavel Durov, a social experiment in one man, a man who is stateless. He's a rock. He wants to be independent of any relationships, but he is building a kick-ass product in Telegram. Thank you very much, Pavel Durov, for your time. And I'm pretty sure some of your 350,000 new Telegram fans today will be from the Wired podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David.
This episode of the Wired UK podcast was brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're working on a mobile app or website and searching for a simple payment solution, Braintree V.0 allows you to accept PayPal, Apple Pay, credit and debit cards, and more, all with a single integration. Just one snippet of code and you're all set up, ready to start taking payments from customers around the world. For more information and to try out the sandbox, go to braintreepayments.com/wired news. Braintree can't wait to see what you make of it.